I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 4, printed in House Report number 112-539, offered by Mr. Bishop of Utah.
Pursuant to House Resolution 688, the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Bishop, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are basically 4 elements that are involved in the amendment that I am proposing. The first one is to narrow the list of laws that can be waived by the Border Patrol on these areas to maintain operational control of the land. Presently, it lists 36 bills that could be waived. Now, I want you to know that that number was not irrational. It was not picked out of the air. 36 bills have precedence of what this House has already done. When California, when the government was trying to finish the fence in California, there were litigations and environmental laws that were prohibiting them from doing that, so the Department of Homeland Security recommended the 36 laws that they thought did or could impede the building of that particular wall along our border. Congress agreed with them, and for the purpose of concluding that wall, we allowed them to waive those 36 rules, regulations, or laws. Those are the same 36 in this bill. There's nothing additional to it. Well, I take that back. Democrats added 1 bill in committee that was not part of the original list, and that was fine as well. What we are now trying to do is admit that about 20 of those really are not going to be a problem, but 16 still could be. So it limits it from 36 to 16 as those that can be waived for the purpose of allowing the Border Patrol and Homeland Security to do the job for which they are paid to do. Second thing, it specifically prohibits any additional access to private property. It eliminates the possibility of Border Patrol reducing public access to any federal lands, and that includes for purposes of hunting or fishing or off-road vehicles. It adds a provision to ensure that we are to protect tribal sovereignty, that nothing in this bill may supersede, replace, negate, or diminish treaty obligations or agreements with Indian tribes. Existing practices of negotiation cooperation between the Border Patrol and the tribes will continue. It also clarifies what is the purpose of Operation Control, which is to prevent all unlawful entry into the United States, including entry by terrorists, other unlawful aliens, instruments of terrorism, narcotics, and other contraband through the international land borders of the United States. There are 3 reasons why this amendment, indeed the underlying bill, is important. Number 1, a sovereign country controls its own borders. We are not doing that here. We need to. Number 2, we will never solve our overall immigration issue until we can guarantee that we can in some way lower the anger and the rage and the anxiety that is out there. If indeed we can look at our fellow citizens and with a straight face say we have control of the border, all of a sudden the ability of solving other problems, some of which are easy and some of which are complex, the ability to do that increases. And third, and most importantly, the violence against women. The women who are raped along these trails, whose garments are left on these trees as a trophy to the coyote who raped these women who have absolutely no other source to go. They have no one to complain to. They have no one to ask for protection. This must stop. The Border Patrol can stop this practice. Right now what we're doing is simply putting up signs saying areas are off limits to Americans, but that does not stop this practice. And unless we can give the Border Patrol access to this territory so they can stop this practice, we're not doing anything about it. We are not solving this particular issue. I'll add one more time. We have talked about the drone zone in here, which is someplace that's, once again, it's cute and inaccurate. This amendment has nothing to do with the drone zone. It does not authorize, nor does it stop drones. It doesn't authorize black helicopters or stop them, or red-headed stepchildren, or illegal druids coming to this country as well. But what it does do is allow our professional Border Patrol to have the same rights of access on federal land that they have on private property and state land. And it says that we will control our border, we will solve our immigration problem, and we will stop the rape trees. We will stop this heinous practice from going forward, and we will do it positively. That's the purpose of this amendment to this title of the bill. I I'll reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Utah reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
I rise in opposition to the amendment, Mr.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment is just further evidence that the problem this drone zone bill claims to be solving does not exist, and that the underlying bill is a dangerous overreach. When this legislation was first introduced, we were told that it was necessary to establish this 100-mile drone zone around the entire United States, East Coast, West Coast, Hawaii, and Alaska. That version of the drone zone looked like a giant red belt surrounding the entire country. Then supporters of the bill decided that they had gone too far. The bill was altered to say the drone zone would only cover a 100-mile stretch along our northern and southern borders and along the eastern border of Alaska. But even with that change, we were still assured that a blanket waiver of the full list of 36 bedrock environmental laws was absolutely necessary for border security. And now we have a further change. This amendment will reduce the list of laws waived by the drone zone from 36 environmental laws down to 16 environmental laws. This is the ever-shrinking bill. It gets smaller and smaller as people realize that environmental laws are not the problem when it comes to border security, and that the zone created by this bill would harm the environment and individual freedoms for millions of Americans. The Bishop Amendment proves that the underlying bill has always been an extreme and extremely harmful solution to a problem that does not exist. Perhaps if we give supporters enough time, they can shrink this idea down to waiving parking enforcement in a small area around Tucson. This amendment reduces the damage this bill would do, but it does not begin to prevent that damage. Waiving 36 laws was an unnecessary overreach, and waiving 16 laws would be as well. That said, limiting the scope of this terrible bill is a small step in the right direction, so there is no reason to oppose this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Utah is recognized.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves.
Would the Chair please inform the members as to the time remaining on both sides?
The gentleman from Massachusetts has 3 minutes. The gentleman from Utah has 30 seconds.
Excuse me? Yep. Could you inform me once again as to how much time?
The gentleman from Massachusetts has 3 minutes remaining.
3 minutes. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Filner.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank you, Mr. Markey. I rise in opposition to the bill, and especially the border provisions of the bill and the support of the Grijalva amendment that's going to be coming. I represent the entire California-Mexico border. I know how harmful this bill can be. And as I read the exemptions from laws, I could see, I don't know, undocumented child labor filling in wetlands. I mean, come on. Our natural beauty depends on these protections. These laws protect us. And the Department of Homeland Security, as I understand it, is not in support of these provisions. They testified in July of 2011 that the Border Patrol, the Border Protection Agency enjoys a close working relationship with the Department of Interior and Department of Agriculture that allows us to fulfill our border enforcement responsibilities while respecting and enhancing the environment. This excessive exemption from a century's worth of environmental protection laws would affect public lands and national parks all across the country.
I yield 30 additional seconds.
Gentleman's recognized for an additional 30.
This would put in danger important parks and monuments, not only in my area, but the Statue of Liberty National Monument, the Cape Cod in Massachusetts Monument, the Point Reyes in California, Cape Hatteras National Seashores, North Carolina, and scores of others. We must protect these important national parks, recreation areas, and wilderness lands for future generations. I invited, Mr. Chairman, the gentleman, I think whose bill this is, Mr. Denham, is he here? I invited him to join me at the border to see what we would be protecting.
I yield 30.
I don't think he ever answered my letter.
30 seconds.
And I am the final speaker on our side. If the gentleman from Utah is ready to conclude the debate.
I'm prepared to close when you're ready to close.
Okay. So again, I will just yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts yields back the balance of his time. Gentleman from Utah is recognized. 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. The 36 laws that were originally placed were there when the Homeland Security asked for those, when Congress agreed to it. It is the precedent. I'm lowering it to 16 out of benefits to you. I have been on the border. I have been on the border and I have seen the rape trees. This must stop. I also have been on the border to see there are 48 different organizations who have endorsed the underlying bill, including the National Association of Former Border Patrol Officers, the National Border Control Council, the local Border Patrol Council in Arizona, the National Association of Police Organizations. Those who work this realize the importance of this, and that's why they're supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Utah. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 5, printed in House Report 112-539. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in House Report number 112-539, offered by Mr. Grijalva of Arizona.
Pursuant to House Resolution 688, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Grijalva, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Out of all the titles cobbled together under this one piece of legislation, Title 14 is the most alarming, and I have introduced this amendment to strike it all from the bill. Not only is the text of one of the most controversial bills introduced this Congress, its intent is to expand the scope and the authority of one government agency to achieve a loosely defined objective, an agency that has not even asked for this expanded authority. Title 14 of this legislation would supersize Customs and Border Protection so they could seize control of federal lands within 100 miles of the northern and southern border at their discretion and without any recourse by the public to counter that. If this bill were to become law, families that use our parks, forests, wildlife area in all these states could be subject to increased surveillance without any notification. We already know what happens to economic welfare of families and the economies of states in Alabama and Arizona when states pass hostile anti-immigrant laws. This takes the same concept and spreads it across our northern and southern borders. Right now, Customs and Border Protection isn't suffering from lack of authority. If anything, it is suffering from lack of focus. The ability to access federal lands isn't causing Border Patrol problems. Radios that don't work, the lack of infrastructure, and personnel are what they have cited as barriers in the most recent GAO report. Yesterday, during the debate over the rules for the bill, the sponsor of the legislation that has become Title 14 claimed that we can't deal with the issue of immigration reform before securing our borderlands. He went on to say that people are angry about the situation at the border, and before this anger is addressed, we can't do anything about our broken immigration system. So we're going to pay some lip service to border security to advance what is essentially an anti-environment, anti-immigrant agenda. Well, that should make many of us angry, because it adds to the division in our nation and in the sense of millions of families in the border region and across this country that feel they are political pawns in a system that is in a game that is never ending. Millions of people live along this 100 miles, and they deserve the same protection from environmental pollution or government overreach that the rest of us in the country enjoy. The original bill granted DHS a waiver of 36 laws. The recently introduced amendment would allow that list to be 16. The fact that we were able to concede half of the original list proves that the bill is from the outset an unnecessary overreach. The 16 laws left in the legislation are not minor statutes. They include the National Historic Preservation Act, the Endangered Species Act, the Antiquities Act, the Wilderness Act, and the Administrative Procedures Act. The solution to a broken system along the border is comprehensive immigration reform. If you took that 100-mile zone along the southern border and made it into a state, it would lead the nation in poverty, unemployment, educational attainment, lowest wages, most uninsured, and lowest economic growth. Yet, This legislation and Title 14 once again take this region, and instead of providing support and comprehensive attention to that region, we further marginalize it and isolate it. These are all the laws that are being waived and eliminated are all landmark pieces of legislation that guide and manage our federal lands, resources that belong to every single American taxpayer. Throwing away decades of law that help protect and preserve our federal lands makes no sense. The supporters of this legislation will say it is necessary to address the horrors and violence that occur in the border. It's not true. It's backdoor amnesty for extremist anti-environmental groups, industries, and developers who lust after our public resources for private profit at taxpayers' expense. That is why I have introduced my amendment to strike the title from the bill. I encourage its support and reserve my time.
The gentleman from Arizona reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
I rise to claim time in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman from Utah is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I hope I will not take the 5 minutes at this time. With all due respect to my good friend from Arizona, for whom I have a great deal of admiration, I would emphasize again that the title of this section is National Security and Federal Lands Protection. It does not extend to any other property except those that belong to the federal government on our borders. It has a 5-year limitation on it. There is a sunset provision, so it can be reviewed. But more importantly, the elements that are in this particular title are there for a reason. There is precedent for them. 100 miles is what the legal definition of borderland actually is. The 36 laws, and I'm ready to go back to those, the 36 laws were the laws that were presented by Department of Homeland Security as those potential laws that could cause them damage, and this Congress agreed to that precedent. Congress agreed to that precedent. Congress established that they could be waived for that specific purpose. I once again want to tell you what the Secretary Napolitano, when she first came into office, she said about this particular issue of border security, that the removal of cross-border violators from public lands is a value to the environment. You want to protect the environment, get the drug cartels and the human traffickers off of that particular area. It is the removal of those violators from public lands is a value to the environment as well as to the mission of the land managers, which is once again 48 groups talk about 48 groups that support this. They come from conservation groups, they come from agriculture groups, but more importantly, they come from the Border Patrol agents themselves. Those are the ones who come forth and testify that they need special ability of having access to this land if we are going to control the border, which is what a sovereign country does. Mr. Chairman, this is the word of what their responsibilities are. This is what we have told the Border Patrol they have to do. Prevent all unlawful entries into the United States, including entries by terrorists, other unlawful aliens, instruments of terrorism, narcotics, and other contraband through the international land borders of the United States. That's in this title. That's their job. That's what the Border Patrol is requested to do. All we need to do is give them the tools they need to have to be able to accomplish that. Tools on federal land that will mirror the tools they have on private and state lands. Let them do their job. They need access to this area to patrol it and to apprehend the bad guys. Give them that opportunity. I reserve.
Gentleman from Utah reserves.
If I may inquire as to how much time?
Gentleman from Arizona has 30 seconds remaining.
Let me yield the remaining time to the gentleman from North Carolina, ranking member and DHS approach.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 30 seconds.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in strong support of the Grijalva Amendment, which would restore proper environmental oversight and protections to construction performed by the Border Patrol. Even with the Bishop Amendment just adopted, the bill waives 16 different environmental laws. For example, the National Environmental Policy Act, wildlife refuge laws, to gain operational control over these lands. You know, Mr. Chairman, that would mean that on our northwest border, the Border Patrol would have largely unfettered access, and environmental protections would be waived within 10 miles of Seattle. In Arizona, this would encompass all of Tucson. New York, Buffalo, and Syracuse could come under control. These are sweeping and unnecessary provisions. I urge my colleagues to adopt the amendment.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Utah is recognized.
Is there any, can I just inquire, any time that's left from either side?
The gentleman from Utah has 2¼ minutes remaining. The gentleman from Arizona has no time remaining.
Let me just say once again, I appreciate the arguments that are given. When I have been on the border and been able to talk to the people who work on the border, what they need to protect the border, once again, they're telling us they need the access. The ability to waive these laws, these rules, these regulations, is what we have done in the past. Congress already did it once before. There is precedent. This is not something that is new, but this is what is definitely needed. This is the right thing to do. So I urge you to reject this particular amendment. And in all fairness, Mr. Chair, it would be possible for me to yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Arizona so he has a chance to close on his particular amendment.
Gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your courtesy. Thank you. I would, at this point, say that I appreciate the time, and I'll wait to call for an ayes and nays. Thank you very much.
The question is now offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the Chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Gentleman from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona will be postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 6, printed in House Report 112-539. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Hawaii seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 6, printed in House Report number 112-539, offered by Ms. Hanabusa of Hawaii.
Pursuant to House Resolution 688, the gentlewoman from Hawaii, Ms. Hanabusa, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The Chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Hawaii.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to begin by saying that we've had this amendment, my amendment, before the committee, and the representations that were made was that it did not cover Hawaii. I'm here to basically reaffirm that on the floor of the House. This all started because when I was home, I was the speaker at the 50th anniversary of the USS Arizona Memorial. As I sat there, I began to understand that, in fact, the National Park Service has jurisdiction over the Arizona and all of its facilities in Pearl Harbor. So it caused me to go back and check exactly how many lands are under the jurisdiction of the National Park Service and Fish and Wildlife, which would fall within this law. There are 357,772 acres in the National Park Service and 298,980 acres under the Fish and Wildlife Service. And as you all know, with 100 miles from any border, it would cover the whole state of Hawaii. But, Mr. Chair, I believe that with the representation from the gentleman from Utah, I would be willing to withdraw my amendment if I am again assured that this is not intended to cover Hawaii. And I reserve until I hear from the gentleman from Utah.
Gentlelady from Hawaii
Gentlelady yield?
Yes, I do yield.
Gentlelady yields.
Yes. Hawaii was taken out in committee. It is not put in with the amendment that was just passed.
With that, Mr. Chair, I respectively ask for unanimous consent to withdraw my amendment.
Without objection.
Thank you very much.
The amendment is withdrawn. The Chair understands that Amendment Number 7 will not be offered. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in House Report 112-539, on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment Number 2 by Mr. DeFazio of Oregon. Amendment Number 3 by Mr. Markey of Massachusetts. Amendment Number 5 by Mr. Grijalva of Arizona. The Chair will reduce to 2 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote after the first vote in this series. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on Amendment Number 2, printed in House Report 112-539 by the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 2, printed in House Report number 112-539, offered by Mr. DeFazio of Oregon.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those favoring a recorded vote shall rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
A couple of amendment votes here leading up to a vote on final passage of the Land and Water Bill. This legislation combines 14 bills from the Natural Resources Committee. While the House is voting on this land bill, voting is underway in the Senate on up to 73 amendments to the Farm Bill, including one that Congressional Quarterly writes would undo a multi-year cut to the nation's largest food aid program, food stamps, by taking money from the federally subsidized crop insurance program. Final passage of the Farm Bill in the Senate is possible by the end of the week. The current Farm Bill expires September 30th. The CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase was on Capitol Hill again today, appearing before the House Financial Services Committee. The Hill writes that if Chief Executive Jamie Dimon got the kid gloves treatment in the Senate last week, the boxing gloves were out in the House today. The head of the nation's largest bank found himself on the defensive from members of both parties as lawmakers probed and pressed the banker on how his firm managed to lose billions of dollars in a bet on corporate debt. The two sides often spoke over and interrupted each other in a hearing that occasionally turned heated. We're going to have the entire hearing from today after the House is out tonight here on C-SPAN, but right now we're going to show you Jamie Dimon's opening statement during this vote.
Chairman Baucus, Ranking Member Frank, and members of the committee, I'm appearing today to discuss recent losses in a portfolio held by J.P. Morgan Chase's
Mr. Chairman, could we get him to pull the mic a little bit closer?
Chief Investment Office. These losses have generated considerable attention, and while we are still reviewing the facts, I will explain everything I can to the extent possible. J.P. Morgan Chase's 6 lines of business provide a broad array of financial products and services to individuals, small and large businesses, governments, and not-for-profits. These include deposit accounts, loans, credit cards, mortgages, capital markets advice, mutual funds, and other investments. Let me start by explaining what the Chief Investment Office does. Like many banks, we have more deposits than loans. At quarter end, we held approximately $1.1 trillion in deposits and $700 billion in loans. CIO, along with our Treasury unit, invests excess cash in a portfolio that includes treasuries, agencies, mortgage-backed securities, high-quality securities, corporate debt, and other domestic and overseas assets. It also serves as an important vehicle for managing the assets and liabilities of the consolidated company. In short, the bulk of CIO's responsibilities is to manage an approximately $350 billion portfolio in a conservative manner. While their primary purpose is to invest excess liabilities and manage long-term interest rate and currency exposure, it also maintains a smaller synthetic credit portfolio whose original intent was to protect or hedge the company against a systemic event like the financial crisis or the current Eurozone situation. So what happened? In December 2011, as part of a firm-wide effort in anticipation of new Basel capital requirements, we instructed CIO to reduce risk-weighted assets and associated risk. To achieve this in the synthetic credit portfolio, the CIO could simply have reduced its existing positions. Instead, starting in mid-January, it embarked on a complex strategy that entailed adding positions that it believed would offset the existing ones. This strategy, however, ended up creating a portfolio that was larger and ultimately resulted in even more complex and hard-to-manage risks. This portfolio morphed into something that, rather than protect the firm, created new and potentially larger risks. As a result, we've let a lot of people down, and we are sorry for it. Now let me turn to what went wrong. We believe this series of events led to the difficulties in the synthetic credit portfolio. These are detailed in my written testimony, but I'd highlight the following. CIO's strategy for reducing the synthetic credit portfolio was poorly conceived and poorly vetted. In hindsight, the traders did not have the requisite understanding of the risk they took. The risk limits for the synthetic credit portfolio should have been specific to the portfolio and much more granular, i.e., only allowing lower limits on each specific risk being taken. CIO, particularly the synthetic credit portfolio, should have gotten more scrutiny from both senior management and the firm-wide risk control function. In response to this incident, we've already taken a number of important actions to guard against a recurrence. We've appointed entirely new leadership for CIO. Importantly, our team has made real progress in aggressively analyzing, managing, and significantly reducing our risk going forward. While this does not reduce the losses already incurred, and does not preclude future losses, it does reduce the probability and magnitude of future losses. We are also conducting an extensive review of this incident, which our Board of Directors is independently overseeing. When we make mistakes, we take them seriously, and often we're our own toughest critic. In the normal course of business, we apply lessons learned to the entire firm, so we can never say we won't make mistakes. In fact, we know we will make mistakes. We do believe this to be an isolated event. We will not make light of these losses, but they should be put into perspective. We will lose some of our shareholders' money. In fact, we feel terrible, but no client, customer, or taxpayer money was affected by the incident. Our fortress balance sheet remains intact. As of quarter end, we held $190 billion in equity and well over $30 billion in loan loss reserves. We maintain extremely strong capital ratios, which remain far in excess of regulatory capital standards. As of March 31st, our Basel I Tier 1 common ratio is 10.4%, and our estimated Basel III Tier 1 common ratio is 8.2%, both among the highest in the banking sector. We expect both these numbers to be higher by the end of the year. All of our lines of business remain profitable and continue to serve consumers and businesses. And while there's still 2 weeks left in our second quarter, we expect our quarter to be solidly profitable. In short, our strong capital position and diversified business model did what they were supposed to do, cushion us against unexpected loss in one area of our business. While this incident is embarrassing, it should not and will not detract our employees from our main mission, to serve clients, consumers, and companies and their communities around the globe. During 2011, J.P. Morgan raised capital and provided credit of over $1.8 trillion for our consumer and commercial clients, up 18% from the prior year. We provided more than $17 billion of credit to U.S. small businesses, up 52% over the prior year. And over the past 3 years, in the face of significant economic headwinds, we made the decision not to retrench but to step up, as we did with markets in turmoil when we were the only bank willing to commit to lend billions to the states of California, New Jersey, and Illinois. All of these activities come with risk. And just as we remain focused on serving our clients, we also remain focused on managing the risk of our businesses, particularly given today's considerable global economic and financial volatility. Last, I would like to say that in the face of these recent losses, we have come together as a firm, acknowledged our mistakes, and committed ourselves to fixing them. We will learn from this incident, and my conviction is we will emerge from this moment a stronger, smarter, better company. I would also like to speak directly for a moment to our 260,000 employees, many of whom are watching this hearing today. I want all of you to know how proud I am of J.P. Morgan Chase, the company, and how proud I am of what you do every day for your clients and communities around the world. Thank you. I'd welcome any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond. And let me say that the first panel unanimously said that there was that J.P. Morgan had sufficient capital and that there were no liquidity problems and that depositors' monies, clients' monies were certainly not at risk. So,
Mr. Chairman, a point of order. Are we going to ask the witness to take an oath and testify under oath, or has that process been waived here?
Well, we've never done that. And in my mind, I see no reason at this hearing to do what we have not done in several years.
I object to that, sir. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I see no reason to place this witness under. This is not a criminal proceeding or even a civil proceeding, and he's voluntarily come before us.
Mr. Manzullo. Mr. Manzullo.
And at this time, Mr. Manzullo for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling this hearing. Mr. Diamond, on the third to the last paragraph of your written testimony, you've written, all of these activities come with a risk. And just as we have remained focused on serving our clients, we have also remained focused on managing the risk of our business, particularly given today's considerable global economic and financial volatility. I just returned from a conference in Copenhagen with members of the EU Parliament discussing the tremendous crisis going on with the Eurozone countries. The IMF has estimated that the average debt of the 17 Eurozone countries is about 80% of GDP. But in the United States, the debt of this country, which includes state, local, and federal, is 107% of GDP. And my question to you is, what do you think is going to be the bigger story 2 years from now in terms of the health and strength of the financial industry, the trading losses at JPM or the Eurozone?
I mean, I'm sorry I take up so many people's time in this loss, because it is rather not significant in the global scheme of things and the things that you all have to worry about as legislators and what we need to worry about in Europe. Europe is a significant event. I'm far more worried about Europe than I am about this trading position, and I hope the legislators over there can overcome their complications and keep the Eurozone alive.
Can you give us a reading, in your opinion, as to the impact, for example, on the U.S. economy, should the Greeks decide to get out of the Eurozone, go back to the drama, or should the entire Eurozone itself collapse?
You know, unfortunately, as a bank, we have to prepare for all eventualities, so we're not guessing what might happen. I want to make sure we can come forward to our shareholders and communities and say, whatever happens, we can survive and thrive going forward. Greece defaulting alone is not the issue. It's Greece leaving the euro, and the fallout effect of that might be a bank run in Italy and Spain. What we see is they're trying to put firewalls in place to stop that from happening. If I had to guess at the outcome, I think that might work. I think it's important they do that and hold back a crisis, and then they have to go about having a real fiscal treaty among the 17 nations of the euro. So short-term solutions may stop a crisis, but they won't stop. They've got to really fix the underlying problems.
Italy has an economy that's 2.5 times that of Ireland, Portugal, and Greece combined. The Italian banks don't have a liquidity problem. They have a big problem with debt. And could you address the impact of debt on nations as it relates to the ability as it relates to liquidity, but more importantly, the overall economy?
The banking, you know, Italy, surprisingly, is actually a very wealthy nation, and they have the wherewithal to meet their debt, but they're having a crisis of confidence, which is damaging that. The banks there own a lot of the sovereign debt. Banking systems don't function very well if the sovereign system is not functioning. I mean, they actually go hand in hand. So you need to fix both to make the whole financial system strong there.
And the reason I ask that is that, as you know, that the EU is our largest trading partner. And your bank is obviously involved in international finance. And it's always important for members to be able to glean from people who are on the inside of seeing that happening. Can you give, I'm not looking for a forecast, but how do you see the Eurozone issue as being resolved?
In Europe, what we see is that the politicians have the will. They want to fix it. They talk about no plan B. There's only one plan, which is to keep the euro alive. I think the way is very hard because you have 17 nations and 17 parliaments. So what our economists think, and a lot of smart people I listen to, that there will be a firewall for Italy and Spain, that you will have growth and austerity plans for the southern nations, and that the 17 nations will come with a fiscal treaty which has more carrots and sticks in it. and that is believable by the world, and that will show long-term progress of getting down the debts of Europe.
Thank you, Mr. Frank, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Diamond, you said that you want there particularly to be smart regulation as opposed to more. The Commodities Futures Trading Commission budget was $200 million for the year. It's been proposed to cut it. The President proposed to raise it to $308. Not, it seems to be a huge sum. Do you think at the level of $180 million you can get smart regulation out of the CFTC?
I have never looked at the CFTC's budgets. I don't know what they need, and so it would really be almost impossible for me to comment on it.
Well, I'm disappointed. By the way, the Appropriations Committee just voted 27 to 19 not to give them the additional funds. I am surprised because it did seem to me you are well informed about other aspects of what the federal government does or doesn't do, and to talk about smart regulation, but to, in effect, give them a pass on a substantial reduction of the CFTC seems to me to be a mistake. But that's your answer. Next question is the legislation that would remove any application. I understand there's a VOCA rule debate, but as you know, over and above the VOCA rule, there are requirements we have put on derivative trading, which you've spoken of somewhat favorably. But there is legislation that would have exempted the transactions in question and any other transactions conducted overseas, not in this country, from the rules about clearing where possible, about transparency. Do you believe that we should enact that and exempt the kinds of activities we're talking about here, even when conducted by an American institution, from these regulations?
So these trades are not exempt from regulations.
No, I'm talking about the regulation, Mr. Diamond. You know what I mean. I'm talking about the specific rules enacted in the financial reform bill that are about to be adopted regarding derivatives, transparency, etc. There's a bill, as you know, that would exempt derivative trades overseas. I understand it's over and above the VOCA rule, whether in a bank or not, but there are two sets of rules here. Do you believe, are you supportive of that bill that would exempt these trades from the rules on derivatives that we hope to have in place?
Yes.
Why do you think that they are adequately regulated elsewhere? Why would you not want the American regulators to have an ability to, for instance, transparency and clearing where possible? I thought you were approving of those. Why would we want to exempt these kinds of activities from those rules?
So these trades are visible and regulated by the OCC and the Fed. 60% of these trades were, in fact, cleared. All of them were fully collateralized, so not against rules that cause those things.
Well, if they were fully cleared, Mr. Diamond, excuse me, but then they would have met the rule. But it does seem to me there were some problems with this in terms of your knowing about when they happened, about your being uninformed about them or underinformed. But you are in favor of exempting these kinds of trades from any American derivative regulation.
Not any. Prudential they should have. Transparency they should have.
The regulation of derivatives. Well, no, the transparency is part of the thing you would be exempted from. There's no legal requirement for transparency other than that. Well, once again, I'm disappointed. Let me ask you, because we have a time issue, you said that you are, because you have a fortress balance sheet, these are not a threat. But what about institutions whose balance sheets are less impregnable? As I said, a couple of chain link, maybe a picket fence or two. Should we have rules, since we don't legislate just for J.P. Morgan Chase? Is there a danger that this kind of activity in a financial institution, an insured institution, with less of a strong balance sheet might cause some problems?
I don't know, but I think you should all take comfort in the fact that all American banks are better capitalized. The system is far stronger today.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Dunn, that wasn't the question I asked. The question is, and we can't assume that's going to be that way forever. And there are some who are resisting the capitalization. So if you were not as well capitalized, would this have had some problems in it that we didn't have because of your balance sheet? I mean, you said you have a fortress balance sheet. That assumes there's something special about the way you are that made us have to worry less. But we can't assume that's going to be the case for every financial institution.
But I also said that we'll be solidly profitable this quarter, so relative to earnings.
That's not the question, Mr. Diamond. Please don't filibuster. Well, let me ask you now. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I asked specific questions. Mr. Diamond well knows what we're talking about. Let me ask you, did say finally that there would be some clawbacks for compensation. You've also taken some responsibility here. Will the clawbacks for compensation, is your compensation on the table for consideration of clawbacks?
Yes, so all of this whole action is being reviewed by the board.
Yours, specifically, specific question.
My compensation is 100% up to my board.
Is it under this, Mr. Diamond, you said there are going to be clawbacks for people responsible. Is your compensation in the pot that's going to be considered for that?
They will do what they see is appropriate. I can't tell my board what to do.
Thank you. Ms. Biggert for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Diamond.
And you can see all of that hearing after the House is out here on C-SPAN and right now at cspan.org. The chairman and ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee have asked the Supreme Court to televise the delivery of its upcoming ruling on the 2010 health care law. The ruling could come as early as June 21st, which is the next day the justices will deliver opinions. The ruling will be announced from the bench, with the justices given the option of reading dissenting or concurring opinions. Members of the press and public are allowed inside the courtroom, but space is limited and recording devices are banned. Congressional Quarterly writes that in a letter to Chief Justice John Roberts today, Judiciary Committee Chairman Patrick Leahy and Republican Charles Grassley said the significance of the health care case and the widespread public interest in the ruling merits live television coverage.
On this vote, the yeas are 184, the nays are 236. The amendment is not adopted. Committee will come to order. Committee will come to order. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Missouri seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to speak out of order for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlelady from Missouri is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My softball co-captain, my colleague from Florida, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and I would like to remind all of you, all of our colleagues, that tomorrow night, once again, the bicameral, bipartisan softball team plans to beat the Washington news media in a softball game. And we want to make sure all of you know the details so you can join us in the very oppressive heat that we will be playing in.
Thank you. I thank the gentlelady for yielding, and we are really excited. This is the 4th annual Congressional Women's Softball Game. We are the defending champions. We beat the Bad News Babes last year. We have expanded our team. We have the gentlelady from Alabama, who's a ringer this year, Ms. Roby. You should come out and see her play. She's got some skills. So even though the press corps has been talking some good trash, and they're even practicing apparently on the beach while at the G20, we have gelled as a team, come together in a bipartisan, bicameral way, and between our superior fielding, hitting, and strategic approach to the game, we look forward to continuing as the champions of the annual Congressional Women's Softball Game. 7 o'clock tomorrow night, Watkins Recreation Center. Come on out, encourage your staff. And this year it's $10 entry fee, but all for a good cause, to raise money for the Young Survival Coalition, which is an organization that raises awareness and supports young survivors of breast cancer. And I would just conclude by thanking all the members and staff. As a breast cancer survivor myself, and a young one at that, it is so personally and deeply meaningful to me that the congressional family is always so supportive of the women members. And thank you to my congressional sisters. You guys are awesome.
And I want to just thank Martha Roby for helping our average age go way, way, way down. So with that, Mr. Speaker, we yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Good luck. Without objection, 2-minute voting will continue. The unfinished business is a request for recorded vote on Amendment Number 3, printed in House Report 112-539 by the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment Number 3, printed in House Report Number 112-539, offered by Mr. Markey of Massachusetts.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
This amendment would authorize a pilot fee program for federal grazing permits. One more amendment vote expected after this one. Attorney General Eric Holder and Congressman Darrell Issa, who's chairman of the House Oversight and Reform Committee, are scheduled to meet right now at 5 p.m. Eastern Time about the congressional investigation into the Fast and Furious anti-gun running operation. Mr. Holder has posed making a deal, offering to brief Representative Issa on some key documents in exchange for calling off a contempt vote during a hearing scheduled for tomorrow. We'll keep you updated on the story and have live coverage of the hearing if it happens tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern on C-SPAN 3. And we'll also have Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke's news conference after the Federal Open Market Committee meets tomorrow about monetary policy. That'll be live in the afternoon at 2:15 Eastern, also on C-SPAN 3.
On this vote, the yeas are 156, the nays are 268. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on Amendment Number 5, printed in House Report 112-539 by the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Grijalva, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in House Report number 112-539, offered by Mr. Grijalva of Arizona.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the requested vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is in order. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
This amendment would remove language from the bill exempting Homeland Security Department border security activities from a wide variety of environmental and land use laws. The National Journal writes that West Virginia Democrats, Senators Joe Manchin, Representative Nick Ray Hall, and Governor Earl Ray Tomblin will not join their state's delegation at the Democratic National Convention in Charlotte, North Carolina this summer. Mr. Manchin backed President Obama in 2008, but has worked to distance himself from the president this year as he seeks re-election in a state in which President Obama is unpopular. In April, Manchin told National Journal that he had not decided if he would vote for President Obama or GOP frontrunner Mitt Romney, a stance echoed by Governor Tomblin. West Virginia Senator Jay Rockefeller, however, is scheduled to attend the convention. Up next, up to 10 minutes of debate, a procedural vote, and then a vote on final passage of the Land and Water Bill.
Mr. Olson. Mr. Olson votes no. Mr. Bishop of Georgia. Off aye on no for Mr. Bishop of Georgia. Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas. Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas votes aye.
The nays are 247.
Mrs.